This is CBC Here and Now.
The only option we have if we wanted to end this right now would just be to give in, and there's some issues left that are just too important.
And we're not opposed to working with employers on those challenges, but it can't be one-sided.
At an impasse, a month-long labor dispute in Grand Falls, Windsor stretches on. Tonight, why one expert says municipalities will want to keep an eye on this one.
We saw a little bit of a break in that humidity over the last couple of days, but it's coming back. We've got heat warnings in place for parts of the province.
When thinking about Newfoundland art, mosaics probably don't come to mind. But now the work of one artist has made its way to an exhibition across the Atlantic.
This is the first time that a country from North America has been invited to exhibit in Europe.
That's coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes. An Afghan Canadian living in St. John's says it's devastating to see her parents' home country fall to the Taliban. Khadija Ibrahim says her mother and her family fled Afghanistan in the 1980s, but she has many family members still living there in fear. She shared some of her and her family's thoughts with us today.
Seeing family members, or even just hearing accounts from my own family members that, they packed up their suitcases and they're all in one home hiding, multiple families, and then seeing people run through the streets. The images of the airplane are not something I can even look at anymore. I mean, it was shared so many times, but you're in complete terror for everyone that's there. And I tell my partner and my friends all the time that, these are people who look just like me and my sisters and my nieces and nephews, and they're sleeping on the ground in really awful circumstances, and there's nothing we can do, and the banks are closed, and there's both a level of devastation and sadness, but an enormous amount of guilt because there's so little that we can do, and yet I get to sit here in complete comfort and safety and just not do anything. And it's just really sad. Yesterday was particularly difficult. I spent, I think, the majority of the day crying, just constant ups and downs. And you hear news that, so-and-so, your cousin is safe. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, we hadn't heard from him in 4 days. But it's that level of awareness, knowing that could have been us. Even in the cusp of, the Taliban taking over, my aunt told my mom that, they were still sending the girls to school. And they were trying their best that their educations wouldn't be affected. And at this point, we don't know what's going to happen. I reached out to my family and said, is there something you want to let Canadians know? And what they replied back was that they don't want to be bombed. They just want to live a life without being shot at, without constant destruction. They just want to go to work. They want to feed their families, and they want to get an education. They just don't want to be bombed anymore, and they just want to live a normal life. It's hard for me to convey that there are such parallels between this province and the country that my parents are from. This level of being proud of your identity, loving your food, loving your music, and going anywhere and saying, I'm a Newfoundlander or a Labradorian, and wearing your Labrador colors or Newfoundland colors and being so proud that it's the same thing. It's this, despite the fact that, outsiders may say, oh, we see Newfoundlanders this way or Labradorians this way, or how people perceive Afghanistan a certain way. That level of pride and ownership and love for your people just doesn't go away. And I think Newfoundlanders, especially being kind of the underdog of our province or our country, they're just so lovely, and I'm so grateful every single day to be here.
Terrible situation. Heading now to the province's west coast, where a man from St. John's is dead following a motorcycle accident in Grossmoor National Park. It happened on Route 431 near the Lomond campground on the road to Woody Point. Rocky Harbour RCMP were called to the scene around 2 in the afternoon on Saturday. The Woody Point Volunteer Fire Department and Woody Point Ambulance were the first responders. Police did not disclose details on how the motorcycle came to crash, and the investigation is ongoing. The 40-year-old motorcyclist died at the scene. Well, someone did serious damage to a number of vehicles in the Confederation Building parking lot overnight. Some were set on fire, others had smashed windows, tires were slashed, and paint was scratched. At least 11 vehicles were damaged sometime before 3 this morning. The RNC is investigating and is looking for anyone who may have dash cam footage from the area. A government representative says 8 of the vehicles were owned by government and 3 were rental vehicles. None of the vehicles were owned by government employees, and no one was hurt.
Pretty quiet weather day today across the province. Some cloud cover for parts of the island. We do have a cold front sweeping through parts of Labrador, which is sparking some showers for western portion of the Big Land as we head through the evening hours tonight. But the temperatures today fairly beautiful, sitting in the 20s for most of us. 27 degrees in Corner Brook. That was the hot spot today. And then we've got those temperatures up across Labrador as well. Pretty nice. A little cooler in Nain, sitting around 16 degrees as your daytime high today, and a little bit of humidity in the air as well. But if you like that heat and humidity, you're certainly going to love the forecast over the next couple of days. Heat warnings in place for most of central and eastern Newfoundland, as well as the northeast. We've got those temperatures somewhere between 28 to 31 degrees and those humidex values reaching 36 to 37. But I'll get into all the details when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. A labor dispute in Grand Falls, Windsor is stretching on and on. Unionized town workers have been locked out for a month. CUPE and Town Hall have been unable to reach a deal on a new contract after months of negotiations. And as Here and Now's Garrett Berry reports, both sides are preparing for a protracted battle.
About once a week, Goodyear Avenue becomes the site of a labor battle. On one side, a contractor hired by Grand Falls Windsor to keep the garbage from piling up. On the other, the very workers that truck is replacing. Across the town, scenes like this are the most public display of labor unrest, as the town's lockout of unionized municipal workers stretches on and on.
Based on what I saw from the town's last document, they want this lockout to continue.
Once again, negotiations are at an impasse, and talks have broken off.
What the town was looking for doesn't exist in other municipal agreements, at least none that I'm aware of.
At the heart of this dispute, Town Hall's push to win more power over job classifications and vacancies, and a fight over who will pay for growth in insurance premiums.
The union has a good contract, a fair contract, and we want that to remain. But we also have to recognize that this is 2021. Things have changed. Things will continue to change, particularly financially for municipalities.
If this early Christmas tree at the union office is any indication, we're in it for the long haul.
Logically, I guess I don't have a whole lot of hope unless there's going to be some movement on those key issues.
So what should we make of this dispute? One provincial researcher says this one is sure to be important.
I think that this will be the first of many, many, many disputes like this in the coming months and years, because I think the public sector, of course, is facing some serious financial issues.
He says that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians tend to side with workers, even in public sector disputes, where citizens are theoretically the owners. But COVID-19 and its financial pinch may have changed that.
We all have friends in the private sector who have had big pay cuts or lost their jobs or downsized, and even hourly wages can be higher in the public sector, of course. And so that's why I think that there's potentially going to be less taxpayer support, less support from the general public towards public sector disputes, and that in turn might push towns to be more aggressive.
So if other towns are watching Grand Falls Windsor closely, how this dispute ends might echo right across the province. Garrett Berry, CBC News, Grand Falls, Windsor.
Well, a Gander man who made his debut as a golf pro in 2019 won his biggest championship to date over the weekend. Blair Bursey brought home the top prize of $25,000 at the Canada Cup in Victoriaville, Quebec. But he isn't stopping there. The 24-year-old is now on to 7 events on the Mackenzie Tour, Canada's top professional development circuit. He's also planning to compete in the Corn Ferry Tour qualifying school, which is the developmental tour for the US-based PGA Tour. Bursey says he has had a lot of support from home. Canadian artists are currently rocking the French mosaic scene with an exhibition dedicated entirely to them. And one of the artists is from right here in St. John's. Here and Now's Henrika Wilhelm reports.
This is where it's being pieced together, the mosaics of St. John's artist Terry Nichols. And this is where it currently is, an exhibition in the French city of mosaics, Paray-le-Monial.
This began in 2018 when Ontario mosaicist Sophie Drouin made a presentation to the International Association of Contemporary Mosaicists. And they were struck by Canadian art. They had never seen anything quite like it. I got an email one day saying, "Would you like to participate?" Oh yes.
The exhibition takes place from July 10th to September 19th and showcases the mosaic art of 12 Canadians.
This is the first time that a country from North America has been invited to exhibit in Europe. We were quite excited. All 12 of us artists who were invited by the French to participate. It's also, from what I know, the largest exhibit of North American mosaics ever held in Europe. And apparently our artwork is being received very well. We're really new to the mosaic scene, seeing that mosaics go back to 3000 BCE, and in Europe they go back to the Romans and the Greeks. So Canadians are new. And it was, wow, we're being recognized. That's a very nice feeling.
Nichols is the only artist from the Atlantic provinces who was invited to be part of From Canada. Representing the province makes him feel a certain kind of way.
Wonderful. They are not aware of how this particular part of the world is. And so I chose the theme of ice and how ice affects the environment, how it affects us.
The pandemic stopped Nichols from going to the opening ceremony, but in March of next year, the exhibition will make another appearance in Quebec City. That time around, Nichols is hoping to be there. Henrika Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
So I think if we can be a little more creative in creating our signage and making sure that we know municipal elections on those, I think that'll help differentiate.
Signs, everywhere there's signs, or there will be soon. With back-to-back federal and municipal elections, how can candidates stand out from the crowd? And will voters be confused? We'll speak with the head of Municipalities NL coming up. Election campaign overload. Voters in this province are facing back-to-back elections come September. The federal election is set for September 20th. Then 8 days later, voters go to the polls once again for municipal elections. So what kind of an effect will this short time frame have on candidates, campaigns, and voters? Joining me now is the president of Municipalities NL, Amy Cody Davis. So let's start with the municipal candidates. There are 275 communities holding municipal elections. How do you think those candidates will be affected by the big machine of this federal election?
Well, it's going to be a challenge for sure, but one that our municipal candidates are certainly up for. We're nothing if we're not resilient. And a lot of us, it's not our first kick at the can with municipal politics. A lot of us are running for re-election and have served several terms. But we've also launched our Make Your Mark campaign with municipal and provincial affairs, where we're looking for new candidates to come out as well. So this is a great opportunity for them to start talking about elections, the focus on signage, getting your message out, making sure that your messages are clear on your signage, that when you're sending out your flyers and doing your social media campaigns, that you're noting on that it's a municipal election and that it's September 28th is the date that you have to vote. So making sure that your message is clear so that there is no confusion, or we can limit the amount of confusion with the amount of signs and pamphlets and social media that's going to be happening all at the same time.
You see federal signs, you see municipal signs, campaign literature all over the place, brochures. Do you think that the municipal candidates could end up getting lost in the noise of the big budget federal election?
Well, I think that's why residents need to be, they really need to be aware. The federal election campaign signs will be standard. So you will see, it's Liberal or Conservative, Green Party, NDP. They will all be clear. They'll all be uniform throughout. So they should be easily identifiable as you're traveling throughout your communities. The municipal election signs tend to vary. They can vary in size, shape. Some have pictures, some are just small, with the vote and the candidate's name on them. So that's why I think if we can be a little more creative in creating our signage and making sure that we know municipal elections on those, I think that'll help differentiate.
And you make a good point. I'm wondering if some municipal candidates may be a little bit more wary of color choices that they use, whether they use, red, blue, or orange or green on their signs. Do you think that will affect their decision making?
It could very well, and it's a great opportunity for the business community who are going to be creating those signs to get creative, with the candidates who are coming forward to have their signs created and their pamphlets printed. This is a great opportunity. We can mix things up a little bit and really make things interesting.
And what about the attention span of voters? Are you concerned at all about election fatigue affecting turnout?
Voter apathy is always a concern in any election, but I think what's happening for me personally, just being a political geek myself, and being so interested in the elections, we've just come off the provincial election. We're into a federal election now and a municipal election right on the heels of that. People are talking about elections. So it's a great opportunity for our residents and our candidates to talk about it even more. We need to keep it front and center. We need to reiterate to our residents the importance of municipal elections. These are, your municipalities are where your services come from. If you have issues in your community with your residents, with your recreational facilities, if you have ideas, it's a great opportunity to talk about those issues. They go directly to municipalities. It's also a great opportunity for municipal candidates and residents to talk to the federal candidates as well, because that's where a lot of our municipal money comes from for infrastructure and capital work, different funding programs, the co-funding, different things like that allow us to build on our communities.
And can you give us a sense of how the candidate roster is looking so far around the province? Are you seeing many people put their name forward to run in this municipal election?
In the larger centres, we have heard quite a few candidates coming forward, and obviously, that's just because of the geography of those larger centres, it takes a longer time to do the campaigning door to door and things like that. But we're running our Make Your Mark campaign now with with provincial and municipal affairs department, and we're really encouraging candidates who have an interest in municipal politics to come forward to ask the questions. We're going to be having a session on the Government of Newfoundland website on Friday at 10:30 a.m. Newfoundland time.
All right, Amy Cody Davis, thank you so much for your time and good luck with that session.
Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate the time.
Well, time for a look at the weather forecast and a nice break from the humidity. Nice, I guess, for those who don't like the humidity. For people who like the humidity, it's coming back, right?
It'll be back, and it's coming back full force as we head through the next couple of days. But yeah, today, pretty beautiful out there. Yeah,
comfortable.
Nice, comfortable, very comfortable. Let's take a look at those temperatures right now. Sitting at about 21 in St. John's right now, and then temperatures as you head towards the west coast, still pretty beautiful. 26 degrees for your evening temperature in Corner Brook, and 23 up through Makovic. Now we do have, look at those temperatures as you head a little bit further towards the Maritime provinces into the 27 to 34 degree range. Now all that heat and humidity, which we're seeing into the 30s for most areas, is headed our way as we head through the day tomorrow. We do have those heat warnings in place for most of Central, include pretty much from Green Bay, White Bay through to Deer Lake, and then all the way across to Clarenville. Now it is going to be warm for the Avalon as well, but it doesn't quite meet the criteria for those heat warnings. So as of now, Mary's Harbour is also in that heat warning. We're looking at temperatures between 28 to 31 degrees as your daytime highs, but it's those humidex values into the mid to high 30s as we head through Wednesday and Thursday. But before we get there, a beautiful evening tonight for most of us, looking at partly cloudy skies. Now we may see a few pop-up showers here and there. It shouldn't amount to much if they do develop, but that's about it for the night tonight. Maybe a few showers for Lab City as well. And then by the time we get into the early morning hours, we're going to see some of those rain showers move towards northern portions of Labrador as well. So temperatures tonight, beautiful. Very comfortable, anywhere from 16 to 18 degrees across the island. Winds generally out of the southwest or west, a little bit more breezy in the east, about 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, but a nice night up across Labrador as well. Just like I said, a few showers possible for Lab City overnight tonight. Your temperature should sit around 15 degrees. And then as we head through the day tomorrow, most of the rain action will be up across northern portions of Labrador. You'll see periods of rain as the day goes on. Maybe the chance of a few showers in the morning hours for central Labrador, but that will move out quickly, central Newfoundland rather, but that will move out quickly. And it should be a mix of sun and cloud through most of the afternoon, even mainly sunny skies. And then as we get into the evening hours, it looks like a little bit more cloud cover will roll in and maybe spark a few showers. But overall, not a whole lot on the go tomorrow. It will be an absolutely beautiful summer day. Temperatures in St. John's I have reaching about 27 degrees. We may see areas that see temperatures a little bit warmer than that, but again, those humidex values will be in the low to mid 30s through the day. The winds, nice breeze, 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, but that heat really as you head towards central, well, the rest of really the eastern portion, Clarenville and Bonavista reaching the 30s, even 32 in Clarenville tomorrow, and then similar temperatures as you head towards central. About plenty of sunshine. Terra Nova reaching a high near 31. Again, those humidex values in the mid to high 30s. And then as you head towards the west coast, even the southern portion of the island, looking at a beautiful day tomorrow into the 20s. And plenty of sunshine for you. As you head a little bit further north, though, further away from those offshore, you are going to see the temperatures bump up quite significantly. So you're looking at temperatures in the mid to high 20s as the day goes on. Same thing for the northern peninsula, maybe a few showers, like I said, in the morning for the southeastern Labrador, but overall beautiful day, 31 degrees for Mary's Harbor, hence that heat warning for you. And then another beautiful day again for Happy Valley Goose Bay. Have you cracking the 30-degree mark as well. Lab City 27, and then there's that rain. So it looks like it'll extend further down towards in and around Makovic. You'll see your temperatures though a little bit warmer as well, about 22 degrees. The rain will move off. We're going to see the heat and humidity stick around, but I'll get into all the forecast details in your long-range forecast when I come back.
Time I have gotten sick, I've gotten better quite quickly. So I don't understand why anybody would force a healthy person to get vaccinated.
People who have mild symptoms can spread the virus to potentially older people who may not have responded well to the vaccine, or immunocompromised people.
Well, as Ontario mandates vaccinations for education and health workers, Peter Cowan examines why some people here are choosing not to get the vaccine. That's next. We're going to talk about the COVID-19 vaccine for the next few minutes, what some places are doing and why some people are choosing not to get it. So let's start in Ontario, where the provincial government today announced that COVID-19 vaccinations will be mandatory for healthcare workers and educators. The province is also now offering and encouraging those with weak or waning immune responses to get a third or booster shot. Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health says it's important to make these changes now.
Effective September 7th, the directive will require covered organizations to implement policies that require their employees and others in these sectors to either provide a proof of full vaccination against COVID-19, provide a documented medical reason for not being vaccinated. In addition, covered organizations will be required to offer an educational session about the benefits and risks of COVID-19 vaccination. In cases where individuals do not provide full proof of vaccination, they will be required to undergo regular testing and demonstrate continued negative results.
Ontario is also pausing its reopening level, maintaining its mask requirements and capacity limits. Well, here at home, Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, says some of the recent cases of COVID-19 were diagnosed in people partially or fully vaccinated, but she says that isn't unexpected. She says the vaccine is quite effective at preventing serious disease, although they have seen some cases of vaccinated people with serious illness. Now, Fitzgerald says 67% of the eligible population in this province is now fully vaccinated, and 85% have received one dose. Now, I'm sure you've heard some people are choosing not to get the vaccine. Our Peter Cowan wondered about the reasons for that choice, so he put some of those concerns to an expert.
The best thing you can do to help all of us proceed is to please get your vaccines.
Politicians and doctors have been telling people for months the best way to protect yourself and to drop COVID measures is to get vaccinated. Still, about 15% of the eligible population still hasn't gotten even a first shot. I wanted to find out why, so I've been talking to people who aren't getting vaccinated. Amanda Kennedy is from Port de Grave. She says she won't be getting a vaccine, and here's what she told me about why.
I don't want to take anything that hasn't been long-term proven. I'm a health person. I take my vitamins. I don't take medicine if I don't have to. I couldn't tell you the last time that I took even something like, what's like something that everybody takes for the flu or for sickness, whatever. I don't take anything. So it wouldn't make sense for me to take it.
So, does it make sense? I've asked Rod Russell to weigh in here. He's a professor of immunology and virology at Memorial University. So, what do you say to her concern there that this hasn't been long-term tested, so she doesn't want to take it?
Yeah, she's right. These vaccines haven't been long-term tested. We haven't had the luxury of doing long-term testing on these vaccines because, we're in a pandemic. Vaccines came out that seemed to be working well and keeping people from getting sick, keeping people from dying. So the decision was made to move forward with that. From what we've seen so far, there doesn't seem to be any reason to think there'd be any long-term effects. So that's really all we can do at this point.
Now, one of the other reasons she doesn't feel that she needs to get vaccinated is because she herself had COVID and she didn't get very sick. I'll let her explain here.
Every time I have gotten sick, I've gotten better quite quickly. So I don't understand why anybody would force a healthy person to get vaccinated. I've had COVID, so there's that. And I have that part of my, story to back me up a little bit. So I feel, COVID for me was absolutely nothing.
Okay, so Rod Russell, I want to get you to weigh in there. Should people who have already had COVID, and maybe it wasn't a big deal, should that be a reason for them to then not get a vaccine?
No, definitely not. She mentioned that she didn't get that sick. So there's a couple of things that are really important there, and it's great that she's bringing these things out, and that you are, of course. Number one, we don't know how long our immunity will last. So you get COVID, if you clear it and you feel better after, you obviously made a response, but we don't know how long your antibodies will stay at significant levels. We don't know how long your T cell immunity will last, but we do know a couple of things. So one, people who had COVID and then get vaccinated have really great immune responses, really high levels of antibodies, really high levels of all of the immune functions that we associate with protection from viruses. So basically, if you got COVID, I highly recommend that you get a vaccine.
Okay, but I want to ask about younger people because they've tended to have a better response. She talked about even without being vaccinated that it wasn't a big deal for her to get COVID. So what about that argument? Because we are seeing in younger people, they're having lower vaccination rates. So that feeling that, I don't need to get vaccinated because it's not going to be a big problem for me.
Right, so that's true. In general, younger people are dealing better with this virus infection and not getting sick. And most people in her age group are probably not that worried about this virus. But we need to think about what might happen if we get infected. So if you get infected, even though you might not get sick, even though you might not have any problems with that virus, you can still infect others. So we know that, people who have mild symptoms can spread the virus to potentially older people who may not have responded well to the vaccine, or immunocompromised people. And we don't know about really young children right now. We know that young children, under 9 are not getting that sick. But personally, if I had COVID, I would not want to be around a newborn because I just don't want to take the chance that I might infect a newborn with this virus who has basically no immune system at that point.
So the last point that I want to talk about from her is around this question of, what happens if you give it to someone who might be more susceptible. And we have had 7 deaths in Newfoundland and Labrador linked to COVID-19. Here's how she responded to that.
I know that there's a high survival rate. There's nothing, and I know that there has been a lot of people who have died, and that's so unfortunate, and I really do feel for those people. But if they also, those same people, if they got the normal, flu, let's call it, the normal flu, influenza, they probably wouldn't have survived that either. The flu is really bad. But, why has nobody been forcing me to take the flu vaccine up until now?
Okay, Rod, I'll get you to respond there. That, this idea that, hey, people die of the flu. And in fact, in an average year, more people die of the flu than have died of COVID-19 so far in this province.
Right, so that's a good point. And the problem is we can't really compare. These are kind of apples and oranges, right? Because the reason not everybody infected with the flu, vaccine or not, the reason not everybody who gets the flu dies is because we all have some immunity. So just because somebody gets the flu doesn't mean, if they're unvaccinated, doesn't mean they're gonna die from that. We've all either had the vaccine or probably had the flu, and the flu changes from year to year, and the outside surface of the virus changes, but the inner pieces of the virus are the same. So we all, even if we have a completely different strain of flu around 1 year from 1 year to another, you still would have some immunity that you had from previous years if you were exposed. So the difference here, of course, is with this virus, it's completely new. None of us have ever seen this virus before. So we have no pre-existing immunity at all. And that means we're all more susceptible to getting sick from this virus.
Now, not everyone who hasn't gotten the vaccine is because they are against it. They may have some personal circumstances. So I want to ask you about pregnancy. One woman I talked to said she's not getting vaccinated until she gives birth because it was difficult for her to get pregnant, and she doesn't want to take any risk that this may sort of complicate it when it hasn't been studied. How do you respond to concerns like that?
Yeah, I understand that concern. I think I would feel the same way if I were in her shoes, or if my partner were pregnant. It's frightening, right? Pregnancy is such a delicate period of life, and you have, for the woman, you have life inside you, and the feeling of responsibility must be enormous. I can understand hesitancy in that situation. All I can say is that there's no evidence that the vaccines we're using right now have caused any problems in a fetus or even in a newborn shortly after birth. If anything, there's evidence for benefit, because if the mother is vaccinated, then she will make antibodies, and some of the antibodies will actually go through the placenta a some portion of them, and then in the breast milk after the baby is born. So if she breastfeeds, she'll be giving antibodies to COVID, against COVID to her baby, and they'll be circulating. The baby won't have their own cells that make antibodies, but at least for the first few months of life, the baby will have antibodies that it got from its mother if she gets vaccinated.
Okay, it's an interesting topic. Overall, we're seeing, we're at about 85% or so, that have gotten at least one dose. Do you think, are there valid reasons that people shouldn't be getting a COVID-19 vaccine right now? How big is that group?
I think, well, from what I see, we're still at, or how big the group that shouldn't get it? I don't think anybody shouldn't get one. I personally think everybody should get one, a COVID vaccine. I guess some people have certain religious reasons, or there are people who may have had adverse events with other vaccine in the past. There are people who have allergies, but I would think that's a small proportion of the population, and that most people that are not vaccinated yet could get one and should get one.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your perspective on this.
Thanks for having me on.
Welcome back. Well, the growing interest in backyard gardening has produced outstanding results for some people who garden just for the sheer joy of it. Tonight in our gardening series, we take you to Portugal Cove, St. Philip's, to the home of Robert Parsons, who has been cultivating his garden for years.
I grew up with a small backyard garden in my home in Gander, where I grew up, and it sort of went from there. So we've always had a garden. We've been here in this house now since 1980, and we started with all vegetables down closer to the back of the house, and then our kids came along, and the garden didn't survive their activities very well. So you know, after they left, we basically got into the gardening in a much bigger way. And now that we're on our own here now, we focus our energies now on the gardens. I've basically stayed with plants that I can overwinter in my cellar, and root crops quite a bit. Yeah. And so I grow a couple of different varieties of potatoes. Okay. Carrots, parsnip, beets, zucchini, squash, onions, just a few. We give away an awful lot. We probably give away 60% at least of the vegetables that we grow, which is a great thing. And we got a lot of friends. We host a lot of dinners and this kind of thing here. And it's nice to be able to sort of say, this is all from the garden. Everybody enjoys that treat. But it's nice to be able to share what you grow as well. And we truly enjoy that, because as you say, there's no way that we can eat it all, especially when a lot of the plants like beans and that type of thing all come at one time. You have to have somebody to share it with. So anybody who shows up generally goes away with a bag of vegetables. When I retired about 10 years ago, I needed a couple of projects, and so that was one of the ones I always thought that I would enjoy a cellar. So actually I called Ross Travers and sort of picked his brain about it. He was nothing but totally positive about it. Go for it, do it, go to Elliston and look at those ones and this sort of thing. So that's the only place where that cellar is right now where there was a bit of a hump. So I got a fellow with a backhoe. He came in, dug it out for me, and we went from there. But it has worked tremendously well. Absolutely. I mean, nothing freezes in there, and yet it's only 5 feet into the ground. Well, my wife, she basically does all of the flower work, and things that grow well in Newfoundland, wildflowers as well as cultivated flowers, a lot of shrubs, this type of thing, and anything that sort of catches our eye. Well, we don't have roses. That's one thing that, we grew roses for a number of years, and I guess I don't have the thumb for that, but peonies are great. It's not work if you enjoy what you're doing, right? So it's, we spend hours a day at this, just puttering and that, and then we sit by the garden pond and have a beverage. After that, we just call it a day and sit back and just enjoy the scent and the scene and everything, and just sit back and enjoy it.
Some businesses are making COVID-19 vaccinations a requirement for any employee who wants to return to the office. And some want the federal government's vaccine mandate to be extended to them. But as Jacqueline Hansen shows us, employment lawyers say it's not a simple solution.
At this accounting firm, the golden ticket for employees who want to return to the office will be proof they're vaccinated.
We're not vaccine evangelists here. We're just a business, a medium-sized business that is trying to do the right thing.
In the U.S., some major private sector companies have already implemented vaccine requirements and are considering it in Canada. Twitter tells us workers in its Toronto office will have to be fully vaccinated, but they can choose to stay home. The same goes at the accounting firm. Employees can continue to work remotely indefinitely and don't have to say why.
No one has approached us and said, look, I can't get the vaccine, or I would prefer not to get the vaccine, but I really want to be in the office. If they do approach us, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yes, an employer could technically mandate employees to get vaccines.
However, employers and their lawyers have to balance safety with human rights, like accommodations for workers who aren't able to get vaccinated for medical or religious reasons. Plus, this lawyer says
the requirement for the vaccine would have to be connected to a real substantial either threat of an outbreak within the workplace or the need to protect vulnerable people within the workplace.
Others don't recommend going the vaccine requirement route because it could create other challenges.
It's a question of what are they going to do about it if somebody doesn't comply. Hopefully there are sort of softer, gentler measures that will achieve the same objectives.
Some companies like Good Life Fitness want government help to make implementing a system easier before they require staff to be vaccinated.
We're looking for that clear direction. We want to have a mechanism that will make it very easy for people to show proof of vaccination, and we want legislative protection from legal action.
For now, the pressure is on businesses to figure out how to proceed on their own. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
A little bit of cloud cover out there right now. A beautiful evening on tap and a nice couple of days coming up as well. I'll get into the long range forecast when I come back.
Time for a look at the long range, and Ashley and I were just chatting during the break about how quickly it feels like August has gone by. We're mid-August, August 17th already.
I know, the weather certainly feels like it too.
Yeah, we have some more hot weather to keep it going for the next little while.
For a little bit, and then we come to a halt as we head towards the weekend. But yes, a couple of nice days. Let's take a look at the future tracker to show you kind of the setup and what's going on. So you can see those wind barbs there. They're from the south. And we're going to continue to see that heat and humidity come up along with it through the day on Thursday. That area of low pressure will track a little bit further north, and that is going to bring the chance of showers right along with it for most of Labrador. And this is when we're going to start to see that cool down. So this cold front is going to sweep through the day on Friday across the island, at least the northern peninsula and the west coast. So that's when you're going to start to see a break in that humidity, and then eventually that'll work its way across the island through the day on Friday. And then as we get into Saturday, once that moves out, we change direction in those winds, and when we see the change in the direction, that's when we're going to see that temperature drop, and it is quite dramatic in most cases. So temperatures on Thursday, heat, humidity, the story, 31 degrees through parts of central. Most areas across the island will be in the mid-20s, mid or high 20s through the day, and those humidex values, again, expect them to be low 30s to mid 30s through the afternoon. And then temperatures across Labrador, 27 degrees in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Nain. You're going to stay on that cool side of that. Around 15 degrees will be your daytime high. And as we head towards Lab West, temperature hovering around 20 degrees for Lab City for Thursday. Now watch what happens on Friday. This is when that cold front moves through, temperatures dipping dramatically. 13 degrees for Nain, 12 in Cartwright, still holding on to about 19 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, but this will come with showers through the day, and then you'll see that drop in temperatures as well for the northern peninsula. So down to 13 degrees for St. Anthony, similar forecast along the strait, and eventually we're going to see that drop in the humidity and the temperatures as we get into the evening hours on Friday and even into Saturday in some cases. So Friday's still beautiful though through central as far as those temperatures go. Same thing for eastern Newfoundland as you see that temperature near 27 degrees for St. John's as your daytime high on Friday. There's that drop in temperature on Saturday. At this point looking like about 13 degrees for the afternoon. Friday night is when we'll see those showers roll through. They'll stick around for the first half of Saturday, it looks like at this point, but we should see some sunshine. A little bit of a return of some nicer weather as we get into Sunday as far as those temperatures go back up to about 19 degrees. That drop in temperature very real for central Newfoundland as well. Looks like that'll happen on Saturday for you, about 17 degrees. We may play around with those temperatures a little bit, but at this point, that's what you're looking at. And then Sunday, 20 degrees and a mix of sun and clouds, staying unsettled for the weekend for most of western Newfoundland, hovering around that temperature. For eastern Newfoundland, eastern Labrador rather, you're looking at nice temperatures, and then same thing for western Labrador. And then lastly, we'll show you the foggy morning in Bay Roberts. Thank you so much to Roxanne for sharing that. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, that is stunning.
Great shot there.
Gorgeous. Thank you very much, Roxanne. Well, that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you back here tomorrow.
Good night.